Good afternoon and welcome to this July 24th webinar on preparing for the SAW program presented by Hubbell, Roth & Clark. Good afternoon, my name is Keith McCormick and I'm with HRC and I will be moderating today's session. I assume that most of you have at least heard about the SAW program, and hopefully this webinar will assist you in putting together a successful application for a SAW grant later this year. By way of introductions, I'm Keith McCormick, and I have been participating on the MDEQ SAW Guidance Committee since its inception in February of this year. I'll be joined today by Karen Stickle, a Senior Project Engineer with HRC. She's been participating on the SAW Subcommittee for Stormwater Issues, and also Sally Duffy, Project Engineer with HRC, who is a member of HRC's Funding Committee for Wastewater Issues. Just a little bit of housekeeping issues here. We'll be doing a presentation for about 40 minutes or so, and then we will be taking questions at the end through chat. You can either send your chat question to everyone, or if you want to just send it to the host, send it to Chris Cross, the host. Those questions will be forwarded to the presenters here, and we'll answer them as time allows. A PowerPoint file of today's presentation will be available on the HRC site. The URL address is listed there, and a recording of the presentation will be available at the same location within about a week. Our agenda for today is we'll go over a brief overview of the SAW program and then talk about the primary elements of the SAW grant program, including asset management, stormwater activities, planning and design grants, and innovative projects. Cover some of the frequently asked questions that we've encountered in our discussions with communities, and then provide some more information about SAW. So let's get started. SAW, what is SAW? Well, the acronym comes from Stormwater, Asset Management, and Wastewater. And that's the focus of this grant program, which comes from $450 million derived from the 2002 Great Lakes Water Quality Bond that the state of Michigan voters approved at that time for water quality projects. Out of that bond, $450 million has been allocated towards this program, and that's both for the grant and the loan portion of the program. Now, $97 million of that has been allocated for 2014, and the rest will be allocated as the legislature sees fit in the coming years. The money will be issued on a first-come, first-served basis, and it is strictly a state program. There's no federal involvement at all, so the idea of that is to provide a little simpler application and administration of the program. The legislation was passed last year, effective January 2nd, 2013. So actually, any activities that would be eligible on the grant that take place before the money is actually distributed through these programs is eligible. So if you're conducting asset management programs right now, you could apply for reimbursement for that. As I mentioned, after the $97 million, the legislature will decide what will be allocated in subsequent years. The key to the SAW program, these are for water quality projects, and water quality projects related to stormwater and wastewater only, nothing to do with water utilities or anything else. The guidance and the application forms are being developed by several committees that were created by MDEQ. Guidance, stormwater, and asset management. We've been meeting since February, working very hard, and it is an ongoing process. And we'll talk about what's been made available to this point, but a little bit of a caveat that some of these items, the details might change a little bit based on the continuing meetings of these committees. The meeting notes and the draft application are available today online, and we'll show you how to get to that in a little bit. The main emphasis for the SAW program is asset management. We're going to talk a lot about that today. Grant the funding that's available for under the SAW program. There are grants of up to $2 million for every community and every drainage district and county in the state of Michigan. And this is regardless of what you may have received under the S2 program. It's completely separate. There's a local match, 10% for the first $1 million. So if you kick in $100,000, you get $1 million. So the total program would be actually $1.1 million. For the second $1 million, it's 25% local match. The only exception to this is disadvantaged communities. There's no match required from them. And in fact, they have another benefit that they are eligible for $500,000 in grants for construction of projects identified in an asset management plan. The other part of the SAW program are the loans. And this is a low-interest loan similar to the SRF, and I'm sure most of you have participated in that program. The big difference with SAW is that the money that's paid back through SAW does not go back into a pot. So once this $450 million is used up, it's completely gone. So what are the major eligible activities? Again, developing an asset management plan. It's going to be the main thrust of this program. And those asset management plans can be for either stormwater or a wastewater system. You can also develop a stormwater management plan, and that includes a wide range of projects that Karen's going to touch on a little bit later. And you can also do a planning and design, a project plan, an SRF project plan under this program, or in the design plans for a water quality project that's eligible. And that's very similar to the current S2 program. There's also a distinct category for innovative projects. If it can be demonstrated there's innovative, there's money for that as well. The loan portion of the program is for construction, again, of water quality projects. And the main qualification for a loan is it must be identified in an asset management plan. So if you have a current SRF project plan, it doesn't automatically qualify for a SAW loan. You have to conduct an asset management plan first. Well, who can apply for these SAW grants and loans? Well, anything defined as a municipality, which includes cities, townships, villages, counties, drain and water resource commissioners, and actually every drainage district through the drain and water resource commissioners is eligible for to apply. Road commissions, public airports, and universities are also eligible to apply. And I believe there are other entities, but these are the main categories. So we're going to jump into a discussion of asset management. Consider this the most prominent element of the program, and I'm going to turn it over to Sally Duffy to talk about that in more detail.
Thank you, Keith. Yes, one of the main items in SAW is the asset management for wastewater, stormwater systems, and combined systems. And the program is very flexible to allow each community to determine what is most needed. So let's take a couple minutes to talk about how SAW defines asset management. Asset management is a combination of management, financial, economic, engineering, and other practices applied to the physical assets with the objective of providing the required level of service in the most cost-effective manner. It requires a change in the way an organization does business by moving toward a more proactive method of operation and maintenance. The goal of infrastructure asset management is to provide the desired level of service at the lowest long-term cost and requires participation from all levels of an organization, staff and management, community leaders, and customers. Why do asset management? Asset management plans will be required in future NPDES permit renewals for wastewater treatment facilities. Right now, as permits are being renewed for facilities of 1 MGD or larger, these requirements are being put into their NPDES permits. It's also the right thing to do. It's a best management practice that will allow your utility to operate in a very effective and cost-efficient way. It provides evidence to users of what it takes to support their utilities, and most costs associated with asset management plans are eligible for a SAW grant. It's a very flexible program, and you do not need to commit to a project. The stick, if you will, of the asset management grant is that you must show progress toward funding any required improvements, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. So how do we get started? If you're just starting an asset management program, the questions can seem very overwhelming. What do I have? Where is it located? What is it worth? What condition is it in? How critical is it? And what is the risk of failure? What level of service do my customers expect? What needs to be done to it, and when should it be done to minimize life cycle costs? Most importantly, how will I pay for it? So to start answering those questions, is a good place to start is by taking inventory of your assets and estimating the remaining useful life and replacement value of those assets. For collection systems, you may already have a GIS program that has all or some of those answers and may include additional information such as age, material of construction, depth, soil type, or repair history. For your facilities, your CMMS will help provide answers to those questions. Fortunately, system inventory, mapping, and system software, hardware, and training are all eligible costs under a SAW grant. Here's a picture of answering the questions of what do I have and where is it located. Once you have that data, you can import it into a GIS system, which will allow you to see all of your inventory in one place to manage it better. If you have a facility, you could also use a program similar to EPA's free CUPS software for smaller systems that allow you to track those kinds of assets. So the next question, what condition is it in? Condition assessment can be estimated using a simple desktop review of basic asset data such as age and repair history, or you can do a more accurate and detailed collection of information through physical inspections. Many communities have done some level of cleaning and televising, flow metering, or modeling of their collection systems. Facilities may have capital improvement plans with some answers to these questions. But condition assessment is an ongoing process, and additional inspections, testing, and evaluations are usually performed when starting or updating an asset management plan. Again, fortunately, condition assessment is a grant-eligible activity under the SAW program. Here's a picture of some condition assessment of a combined sewer. Televising, cleaning and televising are going to be eligible costs. Condition rating of your sewers using PACP ratings from the NASCO system is eligible. You can see many sewers are going to find lots of ways to spend money. Also at facilities or in stormwater systems, physical inspections can aid in determining condition assessment of your assets. So the next question, how critical and what is the risk? Once you know what you have, a minimum level of service or goals for system performance should be developed with input from all levels of the organization. A public meeting ensures that all parties understand the goals of the system and that the investment that will be required to achieve them. These goals will assist in determining critical assets and potential failures. The risk of failure of an asset and the criticality also factor into prioritizing investment to ensure dollars go where needed most. A business risk factor can be determined by rating the probability of failure of the asset on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being the lowest and 5 being the highest, using failure history, remaining useful life, and other factors. Then you rate the criticality using the same scale of 1 to 5, based on the consequence of failure versus the desired level of service for the facility. If you multiply the failure rating by the criticality rating, the result will indicate which assets that require higher prioritization. As an example, here's a stream crossing, which would likely have both a higher probability of failure as well as a higher level of criticality because of the immediate impact on the receiving water from a failure of that system. With the information we now have available, we can determine immediate and future needs for maintenance, repair, rehabilitation, or replacement of the assets. The service goals and criticality analysis will guide prioritization of investment and allow for proactive, predictive maintenance and reduce the reactive emergency repairs and costs. A comprehensive review of existing rate structures and revenue streams against the required investment will likely result in a funding gap that may have to be addressed through rate increases or reduction in service levels. The rate analysis is also an eligible cost under a SAW grant. However, acceptance of the grant for a wastewater system requires that what the DEQ calls significant progress be made toward developing funding for the needs identified. Stormwater asset management plans only require completion and implementation of the plan because most communities do not have stormwater rate structures. The MDEQ posted an updated set of frequently asked questions for SAW to their website yesterday, and it now provides additional information regarding what significant progress means. And excuse me for reading this verbatim, but again, this is right out of their new frequently asked questions. It says significant progress is defined as implementation of at least one rate increase within 3 years of the executed grant. The rate increase must be at least 10% of the gap in the current revenue needs to meet expenses. The applicant will need to provide a 5-year plan to address the remaining gap in revenues and expenses. So certainly while SAW is providing a lot of money that can be used toward developing a very important and productive asset management program, which we might call the carrot of getting that money, there's a pretty big stick there that if you identify a funding gap, you may have to get a rate increase or make other adjustments to deal with that gap. Here you can see some proactive maintenance being performed of a collection system as well as some upgrades at a wastewater treatment plant. So to go again over what activities are eligible for SAW grants. Stormwater or wastewater assets, whether they be combined sewers, wastewater collection systems, treatment facilities, or stormwater systems are eligible. You can pay for GIS or CMMS software, hardware, and training. There are caps to that one portion of eligible cost, which is shown on the slide here, based on service area population. There are various caps for your software, hardware, and training. For example, if your community is 25,000 people, your cap is $110,000. You can perform condition assessment, which might include cleaning and televising of sewers, PACT pipe rating, structural evaluations, or other types of physical assessments of condition of your assets. Eligible costs also include the costs associated with public hearings and risk and criticality assessments. Financial planning and rate studies are eligible. And the work can be performed by either your own employees and staff, outside contractors or consultants, or any combination thereof. If you're using your own staff, the costs that would be eligible are wages plus fringes of up to 40%. But those staff must be specifically working on eligible activities. You may also use your own equipment. If you have an existing Vactor truck or TV truck, you may use that and charge back the cost to the grant using MDOT equipment rates. What is not eligible under SAW? Any work for mapping or assessment of utilities other than sanitary, combined, or storm systems. Even though you're encouraged to coordinate other utilities into your asset management plan so that, for instance, repairs made to a sewer are coordinated with road and water main needs, any costs associated with determining the condition of those other utilities are not eligible. Cleaning and televising equipment may not be purchased using SAW grant funds, but they may be eligible under a SAW loan, or you could use your own money to purchase those items and charge back the use of the equipment using the MDOT rates. Televising of sewers less than 20 years old must be justified. So to prepare your SAW application for asset management, you want your organization to start thinking about what are your hardware, software, and training needs. Will you use software, spreadsheets, GIS, or other systems such as CityWorks, EAM, or Innovyze? What is the cost of those needs? How much condition assessment are you going to be doing and what kind? Are you going to do televising, modeling, metering, structural or other evaluations? And what are the anticipated costs and who will you use to do that work? Will you use in-house or contract personnel? How will you achieve the adequate progress toward addressing any funding gaps? That's probably the most important item to be aware of before accepting the grant, is whether or not you may be willing to implement a rate increase. If you're undergoing this program, you probably also want to start warming up your community and officials to the idea that we're going to start being proactive, looking at the needs of the system, and that's going to require some investment. There's additional information related to asset management in Appendix C of the draft application available at the DEQ's website. So for asset management, I'm going to move on to Karen Stickle, who will be presenting SAW stormwater activities.
Thanks, Sally. As Keith mentioned, the main focus of DEQ is towards asset management. My apologies, we have a slight technical delay here. As I was saying, as Keith mentioned, the main focus of this program is asset management. However, there are other programs and things that can be funded through the grant program, including stormwater management plans, planning and design of water quality projects, and innovative projects. The focus of the grant is water quality, so while flooding and capacity can be looked at, it needs to be more of a focus on water quality issues. Stormwater asset management plans. I'm not going to go into too much detail on the asset management plans, as Sally discussed most of this. However, on the stormwater side, the asset management is only for closed pipe stormwater conveyance systems and ditches, not waters of the state. Waters of the state are generally defined as the blue lines on the USGS map. And stormwater asset management plans do not require evaluation of funding structures, but the plan implementation, once the plan is implemented, you'll meet the grant requirements. That being said, you can investigate funding structures, including a stormwater utility, as part of the grant, and the legal costs for doing that will be included, but not the legal costs to defend that. SAW stormwater management plans. These are more focused on the entire stormwater system, including the open ditches, the waters of the state. And there's 3 different kinds of stormwater management plans that can be completed. There's the SAW-defined stormwater management plan. You can use this for an update or a new non-point source water management plan, such as the 319 or CMI plan. And this funding can be used for MS4 permitting. There's no requirements for construction. If you do one of these stormwater management plans, the completion of the plan fulfills the grant requirements. A little more detail about those. The SAW stormwater management plan can be an update of an existing management plan or master plan, or it can be a brand new plan. All of the required information is included in the guidance that's available on MDEQ website, but it includes things like inventory of DMPs, description of all hydraulic and hydrologic issues, analysis of projects to correct stormwater issues, cost and implementation plan, timeline for the implementation of the plan. And these plans must be reviewed and approved by DEQ Water Resources Division to fulfill the grant requirements. And again, no construction is required, you just need to finalize that plan. For non-point source stormwater management plans, these must include the 9 minimum elements of watershed planning, They can also fund justifiable updates to a previously approved watershed management plan, including updates to meet additional criteria, reevaluation of environmental conditions, the next steps in the plans, and any other changes that may have occurred since the plan was originally completed. For the grant to be considered complete, it must result in an approvable non-point source watershed management plan. This grant program can also be used for MS4 permitting. It can be used for a new permittee for the development of the entire stormwater management plan. So any communities that are not currently covered under permit but may be required to have a permit in the future can develop their entire plan using this program. For existing permittees, it can be used for updates to their permit that go above and beyond the current requirements, such as development of new ordinances, mapping updates, inventories, and anything else that are not currently required but may be required in the future. And in order for the grant to be considered complete, it must result in a new MS4 permit. The next thing that is covered under this grant is planning and design. Again, the focus of this program is on water quality, not capacity or conveyance issues or street flooding issues, unless it can be directly tied into a water quality problem. For example, overflows or backup or flooding that causes sedimentation in streams, that type of thing. Planning and design for future growth will not be considered as part of this program. The planning and design grants are available for the following items: preparation of an SRF project plan. If a community wishes to proceed with SRF or SQIF funding in the future, they'll have to have a project plan, and that's the only way that any green principal forgiveness, if that program continues, would be available. That is also available. You could also fund that through an S2 grant. However, that program is quickly running out of money. It can also be used for project pre-design to investigate the best solution for a water quality project, preparation of plans and specifications, preparation of a user charge system. If a grant is accepted for any of these items, a project must be constructed within 3 years. The project can be funded through any source. There's no requirement to fund it through the SAW or SRF program. However, if an applicant does wish to get a SAW loan for construction, it needs to be a project that is identified in an asset management plan. A little more detail on the sanitary sewer planning and design grants. Again, these cannot be used necessarily for sanitary sewer extensions or installation of new sanitary sewer unless it provides a solution to a water quality issue that's going to need to be well documented, and the project need is going to need to be described in the application. For stormwater planning and design grants, the project must be identified in an NPS watershed management plan, an MS4 stormwater management plan, a TIMDL, a SAW stormwater management plan, or any other document that the municipality has that shows the need for the project. And again, stormwater projects need to address water quality issues, not flooding. These are just some examples of projects that could be planned or designed: stream bank stabilization, wastewater treatment plant improvements, installation of a bioswale, a septic receiving station. And the last category that can be funded through this program is SAW innovative projects. DEQ doesn't have a great definition of innovative. They are basically looking to municipalities to provide thoughts and ideas on what meets their criteria, and then they'll decide if that's eligible for innovative funding. No construction or permanent construction or tangible assets can result from the grant funding. This will pay for pilot studies to demonstrate effectiveness of wastewater and or stormwater technologies. And if the pilot studies show that this is a cost-effective and it works, then construction will be required within 3 years. And these are the criteria that DEQ has come up with for innovative projects. Technology needs to meet one of these following categories. If it is influenced by climate, it cannot have been previously used in Michigan or the region. If it is independent of climate, it cannot have previously been used in the United States. Technology is an application of an existing technology applied to a different media. For example, a water supply treatment technology applied to the wastewater field. Or the technology uses an existing technology to apply to a different pollutant. And like I said, pilot studies need to be conducted to demonstrate the effectiveness of wastewater and stormwater technologies. And grant money cannot be used for construction that results in any permanent construction or becomes a tangible asset. If the study demonstrates effectiveness and the full-scale operation is reasonable in cost, then the applicant must issue a notice to proceed to construction within 3 years. At this time, I'm going to turn it back over to Keith to talk about frequently asked questions.
All right, thanks, Karen. We've met with a number of communities to talk about this program, and there are some pretty similar questions that come up. First of all, when is this money going to be available? I think I mentioned earlier that the first round will be issued April of 2014, although you are able to submit an application beginning on December 2nd. If you turn it in before then, the DEQ, from our understanding today, again, that's a big caveat, so our understanding today is that if you turn an application before December 2nd, it will go into a box, and they will not open anything in that box until December 2nd. So there's no advantage for turning it in early. Now, the big question is what happens if there are applications for more money than the $97 million that have been allocated for this year. And again, at this point today, the plan is that all of those applications received on that day, and there's no time stamp on it, just a date stamp. All the applications that have been received up to that point will be put into a hopper, and they'll start drawing out applications until they reach the $97 million. And those that are left over will be placed first in line for the next year's allocation. So again, that's their version of making a first come, first serve. Now, we are anticipating a very high demand for this project. We've had a lot of interest from our community, so we encourage you to get started on this early because it needs to be in by that December 2nd date. DEQ is providing guidance, and it's available online. You need to start to prepare your council because part of the application process is a board resolution, similar to what's done on the S2 grant. The resolution acknowledges the commitments that the city or your municipality is making by submitting this grant application. In other words, if you're going for a planning design grant, you're committing to a project within 3 years. If you're submitting for a SAW wastewater asset management plan, you're committing to funding the program within 3 years. So it behooves you to begin to educate your elected officials. How can the match be satisfied? Well, the first way is you will turn in your reimbursement request for the money if you've been given the grant, and the DEQ will reimburse you for 90%. You can either pay that through cash, or you can actually match that money through community staff time. Again, at standard wage rates plus a 40% fringe cap max. Again, disadvantaged communities will not require a local match. They're the only one, but everyone else has to meet the match. So it can be done either through a direct expenditure or through a community staff time match or equipment match for that matter. So what commitments are you making? To reiterate, again, for an asset management plan for sanitary, you've got to make significant progress. And as Sally mentioned, that means if you show a gap of a certain amount between what you are funding now through your rate structure and what is needed to have a sustainable funding program, then whatever that gap is, you need to raise your rates by 10% of that gap at the 3-year mark, and then have a 5-year plan. This is a very initial attempt at trying to define the significant progress. It's just come out in the recent frequently asked questions from DEQ. And I guess if there are comments, I would direct them to DEQ on what that means in your approach to the program. Under asset management plans for stormwater, there's no requirement for similar funding type commitment, but you do need to commit to implementing whatever recommendations are in the asset management plan. Stormwater management plan, you must complete it to the satisfaction and approval of DEQ. For a planning and design grant, you must commit to starting the construction of a project within 3 years of receiving your grant. And then innovative project, if the pilot study is successful, then a full-scale project must begin construction within 3 years. So what should you be doing now? Again, you should be talking about, and your staff, how do you want to approach? This program is very flexible. You can focus on inventory your system, or condition assessment through cleaning and televising, or developing your CMS. You can use your GIS to build your attributes, the depth, the inverts, the type of pipe, when it was constructed, and things like this. You can build up your attribute tables that way. Or you can focus on another area if you already have a GIS. So you should be thinking hard about how you want to do that. You need to budget your match for budget money for your local match. Begin to educate your elected officials on the program, and schedule a hearing for your required resolution, because that has to be in with the application by December 2nd. Okay, more information. As I mentioned a couple of times, the program specifics and guidance are being posted as they're being developed on the DEQ website. Here is the URL address, which is a long address. You're probably just as successful to go on the DEQ site and go to their search engine and type in SAW committee. And what you'll come up with is this page right here. You can see it's a basic introduction to the program. It also includes the frequently asked questions, the laws, the regulations, as well as all the agendas and meeting notes from the meetings that we have mentioned earlier. All right, so I'm going to close this tab and go back to PowerPoint. Okay. The final guidance and applications are anticipated to be available in October of this year. That's the most recent commitment that we've heard from DEQ. And again, the deadline for this first round, or actually the time when you are able to apply, is December 2nd. Now, in preparing, you need to begin your application, and you should start that early on, because as I mentioned, there's a lot of interest in this. We anticipate putting together probably between 75 and 100 of these applications. And the nice thing about this program, unlike almost any other program out there, is that the costs associated with the application are grant eligible. So if it takes some dollars in order to put together the application, put together the scope of work, those monies can be included in your grant application. And because this is a first come, first serve, it behooves you to make sure that your application is prepared properly, because if you modify the resolution, the council resolution, and the Attorney General's office doesn't like the way you reworded it, your application will be considered administratively incomplete, you will get bumped to the back of the line. So in this first year in particular, that could be a costly mistake. So this is not a time to try and skimp on trying to put together the application. There's a lot of money available, and it's relatively cheap, so you should invest in doing a good job for that. This is a training program that we're hosting at HRC. MDEQ has scheduled a number of sites around the state in September, and those are listed on the screen. You will need to register for those, and we encourage you to attend that, because at that point, the latest up-to-date information will be available, and you'll learn more about how to apply and what are eligible activities. Of course, the SAW program can be coupled with anything else that you're working on. The S2 program comes to mind, but as we mentioned earlier, that money is just about out. You can also, if you can do a planning grant, you can do an SRF project plan under the SAW program, and then use that project plan to apply for an SRF loan if you're not doing an asset management plan. And that, again, to get a low-interest loan, that would be your only opportunity for that. So with that, we are accepting chat questions from anybody who wishes to ask a question while we're here online. If you can send that to either to everyone, and everyone will see your question, or you can direct it to Crisscross Host, and so those questions will just come directly to us. Also, the three of us are certainly available to answer questions. You can either call us at our general number, or you can email us, and our email addresses are there on the screen. So we're trying to look for questions, and do we have any questions out there at all? Go ahead.
Okay, one of the questions we received is the state was working on a rudimentary spreadsheet for asset management. What is the status of that spreadsheet? You can speak to, Keith?
I can't update you on the status of that spreadsheet, but that is something that the state is developing. If you recall, one of the elements of your asset management plan is to take your condition assessment, what needs to be done, when it needs to be done, and how you're going to pay for it, and combine that into a program of looking at your rates. And that can be done through a variety of software programs, CMMS or GIS. But some communities may not want to get into spending a lot of money on a program like that, and so the state is developing basically an Excel spreadsheet that does those calculations for you, and it would be made available for free. I know they got started on that several months ago, and I would believe it's going to be available when the applications are due. But I haven't heard any updates as to when those might be available.
Okay, second question is, can authorities apply, such as a water and sewer authority?
Yes, anything that, my understanding of it is that anything that's defined as a municipality under Michigan state law, and that would include authorities, something that can bond, but they must indicate in their, and this is one of the FAQs that are provided online, that the authority applying for a SAW grant or loan must indicate the relevant authorizing statutory authority in the application. And I think that primarily applies to like drain districts, and they can create a drain district under several different types of authorizing statutes. And the state wants to know which one of those you're applying for. So,
another question we got is, in doing your condition assessment, is there any protection from Public Act 222?
Okay, this is a legal question, and I try not to act like an attorney when when you're doing that, when asked those kind of questions. But Public Act 222, there is a potential for locating deficiencies in your sewer system when you're doing your televising and cleaning and televising. This is a reason why you may not want to do all of your sewer system as part of your condition assessment, but you may want to do a representative section as opposed to trying to do everything. If you do it, your entire sewer system, and not everyone's going to be able to do that, probably just smaller communities, but you may open yourself up to that kind of a problem if there is a problem subsequent to locating that issue. I'm not sure exactly what the legal answer to that is. I think the law gives you time to respond to that. How much time that is, I can't say that for certain.
And just to clarify, Public Act 222 is the act that requires a municipality to be responsible for any basement flooding due to a known sewer problem. Is that correct, Keith?
Right, right.
Another question is, does pipe assessment have to be PACP? And what about a combined storm sewer structure assessment and repair plan? Those questions for PACP, if you are doing cleaning and televising and rating your sewers, you do have to use the PACP rating system. And what that is a defined way of identifying the condition of the sewers through a point system developed by NASCO. But if you're not cleaning and televising, you can also make some assumptions about condition assessment based on just, okay, we know that our concrete sewers built between these years tend to have more failures. You can do a more generalized assessment as well. But if you are including cleaning and televising in your grant application, you do need to use PACP certified personnel to determine the condition of the sewers. And for combined storm sewer structure assessment and repair plan, if you want to inventory all structures and determine what repairs are needed and begin repairs, that seems like it would be an eligible cost, at least for the preparation of the plan, not for the construction or for the rehabilitation costs that would be incurred. Unless you're a disadvantaged community, then you have up to $500,000 to address things that you found in your asset management plan. Okay, we have a couple more questions coming in. How does state define disadvantaged? Well, if you go to the law that was passed January 2nd, they had some pretty specific criteria for what they considered to be disadvantaged communities. However, a disadvantaged community is automatically those communities that are operating under an emergency financial manager or have a consent agreement. So if you're either of those two conditions, from what we've understood so far, you're automatically considered a disadvantaged community. Beyond that, the law had some criteria and the guidance seemed to have some slightly different criteria. So we're a little reluctant to exactly say what is a disadvantaged community until we get further guidance on that. But certainly if you have an emergency financial manager or a consent agreement. Keith, do you have any more on that?
Well, I'm just going to add that this was discussed during the SAW Guidance Committee meetings at length, and DEQ staff were really struggling with trying to come up with a simple way to say a community was disadvantaged or not. And I guess there are a couple of ways of doing that, but defining those borderline communities is always a challenge. And so I would look to see more guidance coming from DEQ between now and December 2nd.
And Keith, I'm going to give you another one on your 5-year plan to address any funding gaps from an asset management plan. Does the entire gap need to be filled within 5 years, or can the asset management be reviewed and revised at that point?
You know, that's a great question, because you're supposed to be fully funded. Well, what does that really mean? Does that mean that anything that comes up, including a major expansion of the treatment plant or a major sewer replacement, you got to pay cash for it? I don't know if that means that. And I think there's definitely some wiggle room from that standpoint. If you know that in 10 years you're going to have a major upgrade, or that you anticipate some change in regulations, the discharge to a wastewater plant or something else, your rate structure should be able to absorb whatever bonding that you might have to perform in order to fund the bond payments that pay for those improvements. So it's a little, I mean, it's not fully defined in there, so it's going to be up to us to kind of define it. I would strongly recommend the inclusion of a rate consultant when you're doing that portion of the asset management plan, so that you have a good enough handle on what how much of a gap do you really have. But does it mean you have to have cash in 5 years for anything that might come up? I don't think so, no.
Okay, and then we've got a couple other questions. Is training of personnel and staff in PACP an eligible cost? And is purchasing of GIS equipment to use to generate the inventory, is that eligible? And in both cases, the answer to that is yes. However, you do have to keep in mind the cap for those hardware, software, and training line items that were mentioned previously in the slide based on the population of your community. And then we got another question that I'm not sure I have clearly here, but it says that it sounds like somebody has done some SSES work and construction work, and whether or not those items need to be included in an asset management plan. You're not required to do an asset management plan again at this time if you don't have an MPDES permit for a treatment facility. So I'm not sure what they were asking with that question, but if you've already done corrective work and you don't want to do any more, you certainly are not required to at this point in terms of the SAW program unless there's something else driving additional work. However, if you did want to do an asset management plan, you've already done SSES work, you can certainly use the information gathered during that process to generate the information used in your asset management program.
I think that touches on another point of this that we've mentioned a couple of times, the flexibility of this program. DEQ isn't going to be requiring specific, as specific items in an asset management plan from the standpoint that you have to do GIS, you have to do a condition assessment of all your sewers, and that's kind of the major example there. If you're going to do condition assessment, how much of your sewer system should you do? And again, that's an item that you need to kind of decide in putting your application together. You don't necessarily have to do all of your system. You probably know where the worst parts, and there's a question about whether or not if the sewer is less than 20 years old, whether or not it'll be eligible. That's some additional guidance, but that's something to consider in and how you structure your application and where you put your emphasis and where you put your grant dollars. And so, you got another question there, Sally?
Yes, I do. Somebody asked if all your assets are listed according to criticality. Are you going to be compromising the security of your system? I'm assuming that these asset management plans would somewhat be public information. Is that your understanding?
That's a good question. And it's kind of similar to the water vulnerability studies that were conducted some time ago. And I don't really have the answer for that at this point. I don't know how to be handled.
Maybe that's a topic you can bring up at your next committee meeting.
That's all good. Yep.
And we're looking to see if we have any more questions. Okay, we're winding down here. So if you do have any more questions you want to post on the chat forum there, please do so.
And we appreciate you attending this. And I don't want to forget, I want to thank our technical support, Jim Martin and Chris Cross, for helping us put this on. Without them, this wouldn't have been possible. Again, if you have any further questions, feel free to email Karen, Sally, or myself, and we'd be glad to talk to you about that. With that, we're going to sign off, and thank you, and have a great day.